Let me tell you something, the world. It took its sweet time watching, waiting, talking. But while they were sleeping, India was grinding. While they were debating, India was building. While they were mocking, India was mastering. And now they done woke up too late. India has already taken over. You can't ignore it anymore. The wave already rolled in, baby, and it didn't ask for permission. Now let me be clear when I say taken over. I don't mean with guns or tanks. No, sir, I mean taken over with grit, with brains, with courage, with a vision that said, we ain't gonna wait for no one to hand us a seat at the table. We gonna build our own table, carve our own chairs, and put our own food on the damn plate. You see, people still out there underestimating what happens when a billion dreams start waking up. When kids in villages with no shoes start dreaming like CEO. When a nation that once had its identity stolen starts reclaiming its power not in a whisper, but with a roar that echoes through Silicon Valley, through Wall Street, through every boardroom, every university, every tech hub. But let's not get it twisted. This ain't no overnight success story. This is a story 5 zeros. 0 years in the making. A story written in struggle, rewritten in resilience. India didn't just wake up one day and arrive. India bled for this. India worked for this. India believed for this. And here's the thing, they tried to define India in the past by poverty, by slums, by struggle. Oh yeah, the media loved that narrative. But what they forgot is that struggle produces strength. Pressure creates diamonds, and baby India, it's a whole damn mine of diamonds now. They didn't fold under the pressure. They forged themselves in it. Now look around, look at tech, look at medicine. Look at education. Look at the top CEO in the world's biggest companies. Look at the people running Google, Microsoft, Adobe, MasterCard. Look at how the world's smartest companies are being steered by minds that came out of India, minds that started with nothing but a dream, and a belief, and a fire that said, I belong there. But here's what I really want y'all to understand, it ain't just about success. It's about vision. India saw something that the rest of the world didn't. While other nations were building empires, India was building wisdom. While others chased currency, India chased knowledge, and that kind of foundation. You can't shake that with any recession, any inflation, any setback. That's legacy right there. Let me tell you something about legacy. Legacy doesn't wait for approval. Legacy is built in silence while others laugh. While others doubt, while others mock. That's what India did, in silence, in patience, with a knowing smile like, you just wait, you'll see. And now the world is seeing it, too late, but oh, they seeing it now. The kids in India, they ain't trying to survive anymore. They're innovating, they're coding at 13, building startups at 16, launching rockets before they're 30, and you out here thinking it's still 1990. You better catch up. The future ain't waiting. Let me tell you what the future looks like. It's a young woman in Hyderabad running a tech firm. It's a boy in Kerala coding an AI program that's gonna change the world. It's a team in Pune developing clean energy while the rest of the world still arguing about climate change. It's Mumbai lighting up with so much ambition you can feel the electricity in the air. That ain't hope. That's certainty, because here's the truth nobody wants to admit: you can't keep talent down forever. You can't suppress hustle. You can't silence brilliance. India has all three, and baby, it's a wrap. Now listen, success isn't just about what you do. It's about who you are, and India has kept its soul intact. That's what sets it apart: the culture, the humility, the values, the respect for elders, the hunger for learning, the reverence for wisdom. They didn't trade their soul for success, they brought both along for the ride. That's real power. You want to know how they took over, one step at a time. With discipline, with family behind them, with teachers who believed in them, with parents who worked double shifts to pay for one textbook, with students who studied by candlelight but still topped the world. with scientists who dreamed of Mars when they couldn't even afford GPS. That's how they took over. That's how they won. The world kept saying, "One day India will rise." And India just smiled, because they knew one day was already here. And listen, don't get it twisted. This ain't just for India. This is a lesson for the whole world. This is a wake-up call. This is a reminder that no matter how far behind you start, no matter how poor your beginnings, no matter how many doors are slammed in your face, if you grind hard enough, smart enough, long enough, you gonna find your way in. You gotta remember, greatness doesn't need permission. It just needs consistency. India didn't wait for no spotlight. They created their own light. And now that light is shining so bright, the world can't look away. But you know what really makes me proud? It's how India's helping others rise too. They're not hoarding the success. They're sharing it, sending doctors across the globe, supplying vaccines to the world, lifting nations in Africa and Asia, educating millions online. That's leadership, that's love, that's legacy. And if you're sitting there thinking, well, that's India, that ain't me, let me tell you something. It can be you. If you've got a dream, a passion, a purpose, you better start moving. Don't wait for the world to see your value. Know your value. Don't wait for someone to hand you opportunity. Create it. Don't wait for the applause. Earn it. India didn't take over by waiting. They took over by doing. You want to change your life? Do you want to lead the world? Do you want to turn your pain into power, your doubt into domination? Then stop sleeping, stop watching, stop wishing, start working, because when you finally show up for your life, the world has no choice but to notice. That's what India did. The world woke up too late. But you don't have to. Wake up now, while there's still time, while you still have breath, while your dream is still alive. Don't just clap for India, learn from it. Don't just admire the victory. Embrace the grind, because the real truth is, success doesn't care where you came from. It cares what you do next. So what's it gonna be? The world woke up too late, but you still got time. Make it count. It marked the birth of India's assertive military doctrine backed by innovation. While others exported goods, India exported genius. When nations all over the world were shipping oil, steel, electronics, textiles, and automobiles, India was exporting something far more powerful: intellect. A silent revolution was taking place. While global powers boasted of GDP fattened by manufacturing and resource extraction, India's wealth lay not in mines or factories, but in minds. Brilliant, relentless, disciplined minds. In a world that worshipped material exports, India made a different statement. It was not just building products, it was building people, and the world didn't see it coming. This shift wasn't accidental. It was a consequence of centuries of intellectual discipline, cultural reverence for education, and a society that saw learning not just as a tool, but as a sacred pursuit. India's history has long been marked by thinkers, from ancient mathematicians like Aryabhata to philosophers like Chanakya, from sages who explored metaphysics to poets who challenged empires with words. That legacy did not fade, it evolved. It became the foundation for a modern export model that didn't fill shipping containers, but filled classrooms, boardrooms, and laboratories across the globe. As globalization took root, India didn't rush to flood markets with cheap products. It sent its best minds to the world's toughest institutions. Indian engineers, doctors, scientists, coders, professors, economists, and thinkers became the new currency. While others built factories, India built universities. While others trained laborers, India trained problem solvers, and over time that strategy outperformed. It was in Silicon Valley that this truth first became undeniable. The tech world, once the playground of a select few nations, started shifting. The brightest engineers at the biggest companies, Indian, the key developers behind the platforms that now run the world, Indian, The startup founders bringing billion-dollar ideas to life, Indian, and not just in America. In Europe, in Australia, in the Middle East, in Southeast Asia, Indian intellect became the fuel of modern progress. But this export wasn't just technical, it was philosophical. Indian genius came wrapped in values, in resilience, in patience, in cultural balance. These weren't minds trained only to solve problems. They were trained to endure, to innovate under pressure, to work without entitlement, to lead without arrogance. These weren't just employees. They became irreplaceable forces of change. And slowly, boardroom by boardroom, campus by campus, India's silent export took over the global system. Look at the names that now run the world's biggest organizations. They didn't arrive through politics or lobbying. They arrived through excellence. They proved themselves in the toughest corridors of business, science, and policy. They didn't demand the seat, they earned it, and in doing so, they rewrote the rules of global leadership. While other countries exported raw power, India exported refined intelligence. This wave of genius didn't just stop with individuals. It became institutional. India began creating world-class research hubs. Institutes like the IIT and IIM weren't just academic buildings. They were power plants of thought. The youth entering those gates weren't chasing grades. They were chasing impact. And they carried that hunger into every corner of the world. Some built satellites, some wrote code that transformed billions of lives. Some worked on medicines that would heal entire continents. And some built digital platforms that reshaped communication forever. It is no coincidence that as India's genius spread, the world's perception started shifting. No longer the land of just tradition and poverty, India began to be seen as the land of capability, of intellect, of potential. Global economies started to depend on Indian talent. Global policies began to consider Indian perspectives, and global industries quietly acknowledged that without India's intellectual muscle, their growth would stall. Even in fields where India was never traditionally considered a leader, like space, artificial intelligence, biotechnology, or green energy, it broke through, not with flashy budgets or political favors, but with results. With breakthroughs that made the world pause and ask, how did they do that? The Mars Orbiter mission is a prime example. The cheapest, most efficient Mars mission in the history of mankind, and India did it not with financial power but with brilliance. That wasn't just engineering, that was genius on export. Education became the passport. Indian parents invested everything they had into their children's learning, not for luxury but for liberation. It was common to see families sacrifice comfort, delay gratification, and stretch every rupee to ensure their child could access the best schooling. That sacrifice created a generation of relentless achievers. Children who knew the weight of their parents' dreams and wore it like armor. This emotional investment, rooted in family, community, and national pride, fueled the export of genius. What's more impressive is how India's exported genius started returning home. Once scattered across continents, Indian thinkers began collaborating, building, and innovating not just for foreign firms, but for India itself. Reverse brain drain. The prodigals came back, not with just degrees, but with vision. Startups exploded, research accelerated, entrepreneurship lit up cities, venture capital flooded in, and suddenly India wasn't just exporting talent. It was retaining it, harnessing it, multiplying it. Even in diplomacy, Indian genius began reshaping narratives. Soft power, once an abstract term, became a real tool. Whether it was in yoga, cinema, literature, or innovation, India began to influence hearts and minds across the globe. Indian authors started winning global awards. Indian thinkers started shaping global policy. Indian voices began resonating in places they were once ignored. This wasn't colonial power, it was intellectual magnetism. And in the digital era, India showed the world that genius didn't need luxury to thrive. Some of the most groundbreaking solutions came out of resource, scarce settings, frugal innovation, doing more with less. Creating scalable impact with minimal tools, from developing the world's most affordable medical devices to building rural, tech solutions that work without internet, India became the global leader in practical, people-centric genius. At the heart of this shift was one truth: genius doesn't require privilege, it requires purpose, and purpose India had in abundance. A country shaped by centuries of struggle understood the value of breakthrough thinking. That's why Indian innovation didn't just focus on profits, it focused on problems. Problems of poverty, health, education, connectivity, clean water, employment. These weren't theoretical issues, they were personal. And that's why Indian genius solved them better than anyone else. All this culminated in a different kind of global respect, not one earned through economic bullying or military fear, but through awe, through admiration, through recognition of something deeper, the realization that brilliance isn't a Western monopoly, that the future would not be dictated by geography, but by brainpower, and in that realm, India had become a superpower. As conflicts raged in other parts of the world, India invested in ideas. While other nations built bombs, India built bandwidth. While others raced for oil, India raced for education. That's what made the difference. That's what set India apart. In the corporate world, companies realized that hiring Indian talent wasn't just an inclusion policy. It was a business strategy. The depth of knowledge, the humility to learn, the hunger to grow, and the discipline to deliver. These traits weren't found in textbooks. They were embedded in the Indian experience. Companies that once outsourced to India began to partner with it. No longer just back offices. India became the brain office, and this was just the beginning. As new industries rise, AI, quantum computing, renewable energy, deep tech, the Indian genius is already there, not chasing trends but shaping them, not following innovation but driving it, the next wave of billion-dollar ideas. They're more likely to be built in Bengaluru than in Boston. India's population, once seen as a challenge, became its biggest advantage. A billion minds, a billion perspectives, a billion possibilities. And among them, a growing number of thinkers, creators, disruptors, and doers, ready not just to compete, but to lead. This isn't a fairy tale, it's reality. The world now runs on systems powered by Indian genius. Your phone, your apps, your software, your banking, your medicine, your entertainment, somewhere in that chain is an Indian thinker who made it possible. That's the scale of India's influence. That's the quiet takeover. And all of it, every bit of it, happened while the rest of the world was focused on exporting physical products, on chasing quantity, on controlling supply chains. India focused on something intangible. It planted seeds of learning, discipline, sacrifice, and excellence. And now, those seeds have bloomed into a global forest of brilliance. It marked the birth of India's assertive military doctrine backed by innovation. While others exported goods, India exported genius. Ask ChatGPT.